One look from him felt like a command I couldn't resist. Ronk Johnson never imagined she'd end up in Seoul. Not in a city where neon lights shine brighter than the moon, where strangers brushed past each other without a glance, and where she, an outspoken Nigerian woman with confidence and curves, felt like a walking contrast in every street she stepped on. She wasn't running from anything, but she was running toward something: peace. After years of carrying her family's weight, expectations, and responsibilities, she finally gave herself permission to choose her life. Seoul had been the beginning of that choice. By day, she worked privately as an English tutor for wealthy families. By night, she worked at Lumen, a high-end lounge in Gangnam known for its dim gold lights, velvet walls, and carefully curated jazz playlists that made the whole room feel like a secret. Ronk liked it there. No one stared at her. No one asked too many questions. She just blended into the flow of life, quiet and unbothered. Until that night. She was wiping down the bar counter when the air shifted. Not the room. Not the music. The air itself, like the atmosphere, changed density. Conversations softened. Glances turned toward the entrance. Attention, quiet, heavy, swept the room like the moment before thunder. Ronk looked up and saw him. Tall, sure. Dressed in a black suit tailored too perfectly to be off the rack. His presence devoured the doorway, shutting down every other detail of the room. He moved with a terrifying calm, as if he owned everything he walked past. His hair was jet black, his jaw sharp, his expression unreadable, cold enough to make ice shiver. But it was his eyes. Dark, focused, predatory yet breathtaking. Eyes that didn't just observe, you felt them. Ronk froze without meaning to. Her cloth slipped from her hand and hit the floor in silence. Their eyes met. It wasn't a normal look. Not curiosity. Not appreciation. Not even desire. It was a command. Unspoken but undeniable. Her breath stalled. The room faded. The jazz muted. The glass she held felt suddenly too fragile. All she could see was him, the stranger with danger carved into every line of his body. The waitress beside her whispered under her breath, barely audible, "Ronk, that's Kang Jae-hyun." Ronk frowned. "Who?" The waitress swallowed hard. "The shadow boss." She said it like saying his name might summon something. Ronk blinked, confused. Shadow what? But the girl didn't continue. She simply backed away, almost bowing as he passed. That's when Ronk noticed. No one met his eyes. People lowered their heads. Even the owner stiffened like he was ready to kneel. But Jae-hyun wasn't paying attention to any of them. He was walking toward her. Steady. Slow. As though he'd already chosen his destination from the moment he stepped in. Ronk's palms grew clammy. Her heartbeat collided with her ribs. She straightened her spine, refusing to cower. She didn't scare easily, and she wasn't going to start now. He stopped right in front of her. Close enough for her to catch his scent, clean, expensive, and sharp like winter air. His voice was deep, smooth, dangerously soft. "Your name." It wasn't a question. It wasn't curiosity. It was an instruction. Ronk blinked, stunned by the boldness. "Excuse me?" she managed, her voice steady even though her insides were shaking. His gaze didn't waver, didn't soften. It held her like invisible chains. "Your name?" he repeated. Ronk lifted her chin, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her intimidated. "Ronk," she said finally. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, interest, possession? She couldn't tell. He stepped closer, invading her space deliberately. "Ronku," he repeated slowly, tasting the syllables like a language he wanted to master. A shiver ran down her spine. Before she could speak, he slid a black card across the counter. Sleek, unmarked, heavy. "For when you need me," he said. Need him? For what? Who did he think he was? But before she could form the question, he turned and walked away. The lounge resumed its life, voices rising, glasses clinking, music flowing. But nothing felt the same. Ronk stared at the card on the counter. No name. No number. Just a gold-embossed emblem of a dragon. Her fingers hovered over it. One look from Kang Jae-hyun had felt like a command she wasn't sure she wanted to obey. But even she couldn't deny the truth. Her life had just taken a dangerous turn. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to stop it. Ronk didn't expect him to return. Her co-workers whispered about it the entire next day, peeking over her shoulder as if he might materialize from thin air. He never goes to a place twice. He must have liked something, or someone. Ronk, girl, be careful. That man is not normal dangerous. He's different. Different. That was one way to put it. But as the sun dipped behind Seoul's skyline, painting the city in shades of purple and gold, Ronk convinced herself she had imagined the entire encounter. Maybe she had overreacted. Maybe the card meant nothing. Maybe he looked at everyone that way. Maybe. But the universe didn't like people who tried to convince themselves of impossible luck. Because an hour after she started her shift, he walked in again. Kang Jae-hyun didn't arrive, he entered. Like the air bent around him. Like the room recognized its master. Like everything dimmed so only he remained in focus. Tonight, he wore a charcoal gray suit, crisp and cold as moonlight. His hair was slicked back just enough to reveal a scar along his jaw, one that somehow made him more terrifyingly beautiful. His eyes scanned the room, not searching, confirming. Confirming she was exactly where he expected her to be. Ronk swallowed, feeling heat rise in her chest. Why was he back? He walked toward her, each step slow but deliberate. Confidence, danger, command, every piece of him screamed those words. He reached his usual seat. The seat he had chosen the night before. The seat with a perfect view of her. The bartender, who had been polishing a glass with trembling hands, snapped to attention. Good evening, Boss Kang, he stammered. Jae-hyun didn't look at him. Didn't acknowledge a single person except Ronk. His gaze held her in place. He lifted a finger and motioned with 2 short taps on the table. Come here. No words. No expression. Just silent authority. Ronk exhaled slowly. She wasn't anyone's servant. But ignoring him felt impossible. She walked over, steady and composed on the outside, even though her stomach felt like it was floating. Whiskey? She asked. No, he said. Then his eyes locked onto hers, dark and unreadable. Talk. Ronk blinked. Talk. I don't like repeating myself. His voice was soft, dangerously soft. Soft in the way that promised the most chaos. Ronk crossed her arms. About what? His lips lifted just a fraction. Not a smile. A recognition. You're not afraid of me. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't an accusation. It was confusion. As if he was trying to solve a puzzle that irritated him. Why? He asked. She held his gaze. Because showing fear was how you lost. Because she'd faced far worse men than him. Because running her life alone had taught her not to fold under pressure. But she didn't say any of that. Instead she said, should I be? Jae-hyun leaned back in his seat, studying her with sharp intensity. His gaze traced her face, her jawline, her eyes, as if measuring her worth, her resolve, her resistance. Most people couldn't handle that stare. They cracked under it. Ronk didn't look away. His eyes darkened with something she couldn't read. Everyone fears me, he said. Everyone, he repeated, his voice dropping lower. She tilted her head. Fear and respect aren't the same thing. That caught him off guard. His eyes flickered, not with anger, but interest. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, closing the distance between them drastically. You're interesting, he said. Is that a threat or a compliment? She asked. Yes, he replied simply. Ronk's heart skipped. But something else caught her attention. A man sitting in the corner, middle-aged, wearing a cheap leather jacket, kept glancing nervously at them. At Ronk, then at Jae-hyun, then back. His leg bounced under the table. His hand kept reaching into his pocket. Jae-hyun didn't turn his head. He didn't break eye contact with her. But he spoke quietly. Don't worry about him. Ronk stiffened. How do you know? I know everything that happens within 20 meters of me. He lifted his drink, taking a slow sip. Especially when someone is watching what belongs to me. Ronk blinked. Belongs? He placed the glass down, eyes narrowing slightly. Not yet. A shiver ran through her. Not of fear. But of anticipation she didn't want to admit. As Ronk left his table to serve another guest, she felt something else. A prickle at the back of her neck. Someone was watching her. Not Jae-hyun. Someone else. Outside the lounge's glass doors, a black SUV sat parked, engine off, headlights dim. She recognized it from earlier that evening. It hadn't moved. Jae-hyun sensed her discomfort before she even looked his way. He didn't speak. Didn't gesture. Didn't reveal anything. But she felt it, the protective shift in him. Like a shadow tightening around her. The kind of protection that wasn't tender. The kind that was lethal. And that scared her more than anything. Because Ronk realized something dangerous. Kang Jae-hyun wasn't just intrigued by her. He wasn't just watching her. He was already claiming her. And she didn't know if she wanted to run from it, or surrender to it. The lounge closed early that night, something that almost never happened. A fight between 2 drunk businessmen had spilled into the street, and the owner didn't want the reputation of chaos associated with Lumen. So he sent everyone home, stressed and muttering curses under his breath. Ronk changed out of her uniform, tying her jacket tighter against the cold. Seoul nights had a cruel bite in winter, even for someone used to Harmattan's sharp breath back home. As she stepped outside, the street was quieter than usual. Too quiet. No late-night laughter. No neon reflections on the wet pavement. No cars passing. A heavy stillness spread through the alley, unnatural and watching. She walked quickly, phone in hand, ready to call a taxi. The black SUV she noticed earlier was gone, which should have comforted her. It didn't. Her footsteps echoed, then suddenly stopped. A shadow peeled itself from the wall in front of her. Then another behind her. And a third stepped out from the dark between the dumpsters. 3 men. Strangers. Dark clothes, dark gloves, dark intentions. Ronk's heart lurched. "Excuse me, I need to get by," she began, trying to sound calm. But the tallest one stepped forward, smirking. "You've been getting too close to Kang Jae-hyun," he hissed, his voice low and oily. "You should be smarter, foreign girl." Ronk's blood ran cold. Kang Jae-hyun. This was because of him? She tried to back away, but another man blocked her escape. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice firm even though her pulse raced. "Oh, you know," the second man said, moving closer. "Everyone knows he keeps coming to see you. You think that's normal?" The third man laughed under his breath. "You're pretty, different, exotic. Maybe he wants to taste something new." Ronk's breath caught in her throat. "And maybe," the first man whispered, leaning dangerously close, "we want to taste too." Her fear flared into anger. She shoved him back. "Don't touch me." For a moment all 3 men froze, surprised she fought back. Then their faces twisted into ugly smiles. "Oh, you have fire," one growled. "Shame you won't keep it for long." Her mind raced for an escape route, but the alley felt like a trap closing around her. The tallest man reached out, fast, too fast. Ronk darted sideways, but he caught her arm roughly. She twisted, slamming her elbow backward into his ribs, fighting with everything she had. He grunted in pain. She tried to run. But another grabbed her hair, yanking her back. Ronk screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of an engine. Headlights flooded the alley with blinding white. Tires screeched. A car door slammed. The men hesitated. And that hesitation cost them everything. Jae-hyun moved like a shadow unleashed. No words. No warning. Just raw violence. He struck the first man so fast Ronk didn't even see the blow. One moment the man was standing, the next he was on the ground coughing blood. The second pulled out a knife. Jae-hyun kicked it out of his hand, the metallic clang echoing through the alley, then twisted his arm until bone cracked. The third tried to run. Jae-hyun grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall so hard dust rained from the bricks. His eyes were molten rage. Not anger, fury. Something older, colder, darker. Ronk had never seen a human move like that. He fought like someone who had nothing to lose, and no fear of consequences. "Jae-hyun," she gasped, shaken. At the sound of her voice, he froze mid-punch. He turned to her, breathing hard, jaw clenched, knuckles bloody. "Ronk," he said, voice raw with something painful. "Are you hurt?" "No, she began. But he was already at her side, gripping her shoulders, scanning her face, her arms, her body for injuries with quick, desperate hands. His touch wasn't gentle. It was frantic. "You weren't supposed to be here," he whispered harshly. "You weren't supposed to get dragged into my world." She stared at him, at the storm in his eyes, the tension in his muscles, the dark promise of violence behind his controlled exterior. "You saved me," she said quietly. His jaw tightened. "You're mine to protect." The words felt like chains and safety at the same time. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek in a way so gentle it didn't match the brutality she had just seen from him. Behind them, the men groaned, crawling away from the alley. Jae-hyun didn't even look at them. He only tightened his grip on Ronk. "From now on," he said low, possessive, deadly serious, "you don't walk alone. Anywhere. Ever." For the first time since arriving in Korea, Ronk felt actual fear, not of the men, but of what Kang Jae-hyun meant when he said things like that. And yet, something deep inside her didn't fight it, didn't push it away, didn't run. Because in his violent protection, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. And that scared her more than the attack ever could. The days following the alley incident passed in a blur of new rules set entirely by Kang Jae-hyun. Ronk didn't agree to them verbally, but they unfolded around her like an invisible cage. A black SUV waited outside her apartment every morning. 2 silent men in black trailed her in rotating shifts. Her phone buzzed with unknown numbers, his men, updating her about her own movements before she even took a step. It should have terrified her. Instead she felt watched, guarded, claimed. She hated how a part of her liked it. By the 3rd day, Ronk confronted the bodyguard stationed outside her building. "You don't have to follow me everywhere." He didn't respond. I'm serious. He turned his head slightly and said one phrase, his tone respectful but firm. Boss Kang's orders. And that was that. Jaehyun had wrapped his world around her like a fortress, and there was no escaping it. The rain that changed everything. That night, the clouds cracked open and spilled icy rain onto Seoul. Thunder rumbled like distant gunfire, echoing between skyscrapers. Rank stepped outside after her shift, umbrella in hand, only to stop short. He was there. Leaning against a car, soaked from head to toe, rain dripping down his hair, his jaw, his suit. He didn't flinch from the cold or the storm. He was waiting. For her. When he saw her, something in his posture eased, barely, subtly, but she caught it. Jaehyun? She whispered, surprised. You didn't answer your phone. His voice was low, deeper than usual, almost strained. I was working. I know, he cut in. But I needed to see you. She stepped closer, the rain smudging her mascara, the cold biting at her skin. He didn't move. You could have texted, she said softly. I don't text. He paused. And I didn't want to text. The storm roared around them, but between the two of them, there was a strange, heavy stillness, like the world bowed, making room for something it couldn't name. Rank approached him until she could feel his body heat cutting through the cold air. You're drenched, she whispered. I'm fine. You're going to get sick. He gave a faint, humorless smirk. I don't get sick. His eyes fell to her lips, then to her eyes, then back again. Slow, dangerous, intimate. Rank, he said, her name falling from his lips like a confession. When I look at you, I forget I'm a monster. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The rain softened around them. The city blurred. All she saw was him, broken and dangerous, yet offering her a truth no one else had ever witnessed. You're not a monster, she said quietly. Yes, I am, he replied without hesitation. But you. He swallowed hard, a muscle ticking in his jaw. You make me want to be something else. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. Rank reached up and touched his cheek. His breath caught. Not because of the cold, but because no one touched him like that. Softly. Honestly. As if he wasn't feared by half the city. Her thumb brushed away raindrops from his skin. Jaehyun closed his eyes. Just for a second. As if memorizing the feeling. When he opened them again they were darker. Hungrier. Desperate. He leaned in, slowly as if fighting himself, until their foreheads almost touched, his breath warm against her lips. Don't, he whispered though he kept moving closer. Don't make me want this. Why not? She breathed. A storm that had nothing to do with the rain flashed in his eyes. Because wanting something in my world means losing it. Rank didn't pull back. She took one step forward, closing the last inches between them, her voice soft but unshakable. Then want me anyway. It shattered his restraint. Jaehyun grabbed her waist, pulling her against him with a raw urgency he couldn't hide anymore. She gasped but didn't resist. Their lips hovered close. Too close. Not touching, yet. Rank, he murmured, voice rough, tell me to stop. She looked him dead in the eyes. No. That was all he needed. He kissed her, slow at first, then deeper like he'd been starving and she was the first real thing to ever touch his lips. The rain fell harder, drenching them both, but neither moved. His hand slid to the back of her neck, holding her gently, reverently, so unlike the ruthless man the world feared. Their kiss slowed, softened, and he rested his forehead against hers, breathing unevenly. You have no idea, he whispered, how dangerous this is. Rank touched his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heartbeat. Then maybe, she said softly, we're both in danger. And for the first time, Kang Jaehyun, the shadow boss feared by everyone, closed his eyes and let himself feel something he spent his life avoiding. Hope. The following morning felt unreal, like waking up inside someone else's life. Someone braver. Someone who dared to walk beside a man like Jaehyun. Rank stood by the tall window in his penthouse, watching Seoul's skyline glitter beneath the early sunlight. The city felt impossibly alive, but inside the room, a tension brewed, quiet, thick, unspoken. Behind her, she sensed him before she heard him. His presence was that powerful. Jaehyun stepped out of his bedroom, shirt half-buttoned, hair still damp from his shower, a vein visible along his neck like he hadn't slept much. His eyes found her immediately as if he'd been looking for her the second he woke. Couldn't sleep? He asked quietly. Rank shrugged even though her heart was pounding. Your home is different. It's safer, he corrected, approaching her slowly. At least when you're inside it. Safe. The word felt strange coming from someone who commanded fear with a blink of his eyes. When he stopped beside her, they stared at the city together. For a moment neither spoke. Then he surprised her. "Last night," he said, voice low, "when you grabbed my wrist outside the warehouse. Do you know how dangerous that was?" Ronk laughed softly. "You expected me to watch you beat a man like that and stay calm?" His jaw tightened, not in anger but in something like guilt. He turned, leaning his hand against the glass, trapping her between his arm and the window without touching her. His face was inches from hers. "I don't want you anywhere near my darkness," he murmured. "But you keep walking into it." Her breath caught. "Maybe because you keep pulling me in." For a second she thought she saw it, a crack in his armor. A brief, raw expression. Something like longing. But he hid it just as quickly. A knock at the door broke the moment. Jae-young stiffened. "Stay here." He moved with that silent, lethal grace that reminded her exactly who he was. From the doorway, she overheard fragments of conversation in rapid Korean. Voices tense. Urgent. Then a single phrase in English. "Someone followed us last night." Her stomach dropped. When he returned, his expression had hardened into something colder. Darker. "Ronk," he said, voice like steel, "you can't go back to your apartment. But I have a job. My things. I'll handle all of that. That's not what I... You were targeted." The words slammed into her. "Me?" "Yes." His eyes softened just slightly. "Because of me." Her chest tightened. Not with fear, but because of the way he said it. As though she mattered enough for her safety to be a weakness to him. "Jae-young, what exactly is coming for you?" she asked gently. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally he spoke, quiet, almost reluctant. "My father's old enemies resurfaced. They don't care about rules. They don't care about honor. They only care about hurting me." His eyes locked onto hers. "And the easiest way to do that is you." Her heart thudded painfully. "Why me?" she whispered. And that was when it happened. His walls cracked. Just for a second. Enough for her to see the truth he was trying so hard to bury. He stepped closer, voice low, rough, like he was fighting it. "Because the moment I saw you, the first look you gave me..." His jaw clenched. It felt like a command I couldn't resist. Ronk froze. The confession shook her to her core. Not because of the words, but because of the way he looked at her as he said them. Like she was the only person in the room. The only one who could pull him apart. The only one he'd let close enough. But just as quickly he shut down the vulnerability. He straightened, voice cold again. "I'll assign security to you. You won't leave my sight. Not until I eliminate the threat." Ronk frowned. "You want to keep me like some prisoner?" His eyes darkened. "No. I want to keep you alive." He moved past her, giving her no room to argue. But the truth was clear now, and Ronk recognized it in every step he took away from her. He was scared. Not for himself. For her. And for a man like him, that was the kind of fear that made him dangerous to everyone, including himself. The day moved like an unseen storm was trailing them. Jae-young didn't say much. His silence was sharp, protective, and calculated. Everywhere Ronk went inside the penthouse, his men were stationed discreetly, watching every corner like shadows trained to kill before breathing. She knew his world was violent, but seeing it up close was a different kind of reality. By late afternoon, he returned from a meeting with his men, expression unreadable and energy coiled tight like a predator prepared to strike. Ronk watched him pace the room as though searching for a way to vent an emotion he didn't dare name. "What happened?" she asked gently. He stopped pacing, not because he was calm but because her voice pulled him back. "It always did." "They've moved closer than I thought," he said. "A message was left outside your workplace." Ronk swallowed hard. "What kind of message?" "A warning," he said softly. "A threat." But the way he looked at her said more. He wasn't afraid of danger. He was afraid of losing her. Even though he had never fully admitted wanting her. Night fell, blanketing the city in cold neon light. Rain tapped the windows like nervous fingertips, and Ronk sat curled on the couch wearing the gray sweatshirt he'd given her, warm, oversized, smelling faintly of his cologne. Jae-young entered the room quietly. Too quietly. He stood there watching her for a long moment, as though grounded by the sight of her safe and clothes. "You're staring," she said softly. "You look..." He paused, searching for a word he'd never had to use seriously. "Comfortable." Ronk smiled. "That bothers you?" His gaze deepened. "It does something to me." She felt warmth creep up her neck. "You've been tense all day," she said. "Talk to me." Jae-young sat beside her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped as if holding invisible weight. "No one has ever gotten this close to me," he said. "Not physically. Not emotionally." Her heart skipped. "You think I'm close emotionally?" she whispered. He exhaled shakily, rubbing his thumb against his knuckles. Against my will. Ronk bit her lip, unsure if she was supposed to apologize. I don't want to be your weakness, she murmured. He lifted his head sharply. You're not my weakness, he said in a low, almost fierce tone. What's keeping me from becoming a monster? The words stunned her. Somehow it hurt him to admit this. Yet he couldn't stop himself. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment like he was exhausted, not physically but by emotion he'd never had to manage before. Ronk, he said quietly, can I trust you with something? Yes, she whispered instantly. Anything. He opened his eyes, revealing something rare, fear. Not of men. Not of war. But of vulnerability. My father died because he trusted the wrong person, he said. Since then I only trust myself. He paused. But last night, when I almost lost you, I realized trusting you didn't feel dangerous. It felt. He broke off, looking away as though the truth was too raw to speak aloud. She moved closer before she realized it, her hand gently brushing against his. He froze. Then his fingers intertwined with hers, slowly, carefully, as though this contact mattered more than he planned for it to. Why does this feel? Ronk started, voice trembling, like something we're both fighting and failing to stop? His eyes dropped to their hands. Because it is, he murmured. A silence settled around them, heavy, electric, fragile. Then a sudden knock at the door shattered the moment. One of his men stepped in sharply. Boss, we have movement. They're scouting the area. Ronk flinched, but Jae-young squeezed her hand once, reassuringly, possessively. To the safe room, he ordered her softly. I'm not leaving you, she protested. His jaw tightened. You have to. No. Ronk. I'm not hiding while you fight for me. For a long second, he stared at her, caught between fury and admiration. Then something in him broke. He pulled her into a fierce, sudden embrace. His first real embrace, unguarded and trembling with all the emotions he'd refused to name. I don't want anything happening to you, he whispered into her hair. I don't want anything happening to you either, she breathed. He pulled back just enough to look at her, their breaths brushing, eyes searching one another's like the world outside had gone silent. This isn't the moment I wanted to tell you this, he murmured. Tell me what, she asked. He hesitated. A long, shaking hesitation. But before he could speak, the alarm system beeped, short, sharp, urgent. Danger had arrived. His face hardened instantly, the softness evaporating into cold, brutal focus. Stay behind me, he ordered. But the truth remained suspended between them. He had been one breath away from confessing something that scared him more than any enemy. The alarm's shrill pulse cut through the air like a blade. Red safety lights cast an ominous glow over the penthouse, making every surface look like it was bleeding. Ronk's pulse thrashed in her ears as Jae-young reached for the gun strapped beneath the coffee table, moving with calculating precision. His men positioned themselves near the entrance. They're here earlier than expected, one said in Korean, breath tight. Ronk didn't understand the words, but she understood the fear hiding under their professionalism. Jae-young grabbed her arm, not roughly but urgently. Stay close to me. I told you. I know. His jaw flexed. But if anything happens to you, I won't survive it. Ronk froze. Her heart misfired. He had never said anything remotely like that. But there was no time to respond. A loud crash sounded from the hallway, metal slamming against metal. They were breaching the door. Jae-young positioned himself in front of her, every line of his body sharp with tension. He glanced back at her once, eyes burning with a mixture of fear, rage, and longing. Whatever happens, remember this isn't your fault, he whispered. Before she could ask what he meant, the door exploded inward. Gunfire echoed like thunder. Jae-young shoved Ronk behind a granite pillar as bullets sliced through the air. His men returned fire, shouting orders, but the intruders kept pushing, heavily armed and relentless. The penthouse, once quiet, warm, intimate, became a war zone. Ronk covered her ears, trembling, but she refused to hide her face. She needed to see him. She needed to make sure he was alive. Jae-young fired rapidly, hitting 2 attackers before diving behind the furniture. He moved with brutal efficiency, like a man who had survived too many wars to fear this one. But the enemy was strong, organized, prepared. Boss, they're trying to flank, one guard yelled. I see it, Jae-young growled. He turned to Ronk, eyes fierce, determined. When I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. I'm not leaving you, she screamed over the chaos. His chest rose and fell, and for a split second she saw it, the emotion he'd been swallowing for days. Something deeper than fear. Something deeper than desire. But before he could answer, a grenade rolled across the floor. The men spotted it too late. Jae-young lunged, dragging Ronk into his arms as he dove behind a marble divider. Boom. The shockwave rattled the room, sending debris flying. The blast knocked them breathless. Ronk curled against his chest, his hand cradling her head protectively. Dust rained from the ceiling. For a moment, just a brief one, the world stilled. Jae-young lifted her chin, searching her face for injuries, his breath ragged. "Are you hurt?" No, I'm okay." Relief flickered in his eyes, raw and unfiltered. But the battle wasn't over. A tall, scarred man stepped through the smoke, a smirk twisting his lips. "Jae-young. Still protecting fragile things, I see." Ronk felt Jae-young's body go cold beside her. Park Jin-ho. The leader of the rival syndicate. The man responsible for his father's death. Ronk felt the shift like gravity tilting. The hate, the history, the unfinished war stretching between them. "You came for her," Jin-ho taunted. "How interesting. Didn't think you had the heart for anything but violence." Jae-young rose slowly, gun raised, expression deadly enough to freeze air. "You shouldn't have touched what's mine." Ronk's breath caught. "What?" Jin-ho laughed. "Then watch me destroy your weakness." He pointed his gun. Not at Jae-young. At Ronk. Jae-young's roar shook her soul. He fired first. 2 gunshots. 1 impact. Jin-ho collapsed, the smirk gone, replaced by shock. The room fell silent. Jae-young stood trembling, chest heaving, gun still raised long after the threat fell limp. His men secured the area, but he didn't move. He didn't look away from Ronk. Slowly she walked toward him, her legs weak but her heart steady. She reached up and touched his face, sweeping away dust and streaks of sweat. "Jae-young," she whispered. He broke. Not visibly. Not loudly. But in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his weapon slipped from his fingers, the way his breath hitched as though he had held it too long. He grabbed her waist and pulled her into him, tight, desperate, shaking. "I thought I lost you," he breathed into her hair. Ronk closed her eyes, letting his warmth erase the terror. "You didn't," she whispered. "You won't." He pulled back, cupping her face in both hands. His thumbs brushed her cheeks as he looked at her with a tenderness he'd been too afraid to reveal. "I was going to tell you earlier," he said quietly. "Before everything happened." "Tell me now," she whispered. He swallowed hard, eyes burning into hers. "I'm in love with you, Ronk." Everything inside her stilled. Not from shock, but from the truth settling into place, like she had known it long before he said it. "And I don't care what it takes. I'm going to protect you. Even if I have to destroy everyone who threatens you. Even if I become someone darker than before. Because losing you," his voice cracked, barely audible now, "would kill me faster than any bullet." Ronk lifted his face, her hands trembling. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "I'm only afraid of losing you too." His eyes softened. Danger and devotion blending until they were indistinguishable. Without thinking. Without hesitation. He pulled her into a deep, desperate kiss. Not the possessive ones from before. Not the controlled ones he used to hide behind. This one was unguarded. Vulnerable. A confession all by itself. By the time they pulled apart, exhausted, bruised, covered in dust and adrenaline, one truth had settled like the calm after a storm. They had survived because they refused to let go of each other. And nothing, not danger, not enemies, not fate itself, would ever pull them apart again.